Take your kid to work day? Well, not if you work in the cannabis industry. Strict age restrictions at dispensaries and offices prohibit anyone under the age of 21 from entering the premises. It creates a challenge for working parents and for the industry. To discuss this, I am joined by one of those parents, Nikki John, founder of the Heritage Club, a dispensary in Charlestown, and Cassie McGrath, a healthcare and cannabis reporter with the Boston Business Journal. Thank you so much for being with me, ladies.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Nikki, I think when we talk about this issue, I don't think people think about what kind of impact it could have. So talk to me about what kind of impact it has on you, because you're a new mom, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I had a baby in May, so she's 6 months old. And it's exciting to get back to work, but it's also a challenge of who do I trust her with. And you can find a daycare, you can find a sitter or a nanny or family if that's you have some nearby. But I think the cost of childcare is one of the first things that people think about is, what can I afford? So that kind of starts that conversation, and how much time can I be away? How much time can I spend when it comes to feeding your children? So for me, all of a sudden I was coming back to work, but I was also discovering something completely new that I didn't really have a guide for. And I reached out to a few other mothers in the industry, and there was no solution. They were like, you can't bring her in. And when you put so much work, blood, sweat, and tears into building a business, and then not being able to bring my baby, it's definitely bittersweet. But there are workarounds in terms of having an office space where I can work and bring her with me. But I like to be there on the ground with people, with my staff, with the customers, to kind of be a part of what we're building. So I would say that's kind of like the impact, is that I feel a little bit removed from the business because of it.
Yeah. And Cassie, I think this is a piece of a technicality that maybe lawmakers, folks on the Cannabis Control Board, people who are drafting this legislation maybe didn't think about.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's important to start off here by mentioning that, everyone I've spoken to on this issue, from regulators to business owners, are all in favor of keeping the industry 21 plus and safe. I think cannabis is just a stricter and more expensive industry, and in drafting the regulations with a product that's still federally illegal, regulators kind of wanted to err on the side of caution and say, we're going to ensure no one under 21 is on the premises at any point. But there are gray areas and nuances, as we're seeing with Nikki, that can place burdens on new parents.
And we know that in liquor stores, which also has an age restriction, anyone of any age can go in, they just can't purchase the alcohol.
Exactly, yes. So in a comparable 21 plus industry that is liquor, which is something that Nikki actually pointed out to me, minors can be on the premises as long as they don't purchase or possess alcohol. But in dispensaries, as you said, there's those double ID checks. It's making sure, absolutely no one under 21 is on the premises, which again, I think people are in favor of, but I think it can create some complications as well.
And Nikki, the startup costs, we know minimum $500,000 to almost $1 million just to start a single, pot shop or a cannabis facility. And then on top of that, not having the flexibility to be able to be on the ground with your employees building it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the part that I know it would just change everything if I was able to be there, and I don't know how quickly things can change, but because it is a regulation issue. But I feel like it would change the industry in terms of diversity. This industry is mostly men, so including more women, especially in all workforces. I think there's been a lot of change about whether that's pumping at work, access to time off, PFML in Massachusetts, and how they keep changing that. I think that cannabis, it's new, but for some reason it's behind the times somehow, and it would be really amazing if they're able to find a way to bring this kind of up to speed on that. And even if it's some sort of waiver that they could give out on a case-by-case basis, if they can't change the regs, to be able to allow people to get back in the workplace and also be a part of this new industry.
Yeah, and Cassie, you have a whole equity section of your article there.
Yes, yeah. So it's important to know one study that I looked at projected that it was about $1,700 a month for infant child care in Massachusetts. Cannabis is already, Nikki and I talk about all the time, a very expensive industry, and equity applicants in cannabis often cite that access to capital is the hardest barrier of entry. So another cost on top of that can really close doors on potential great business owners in the state of Massachusetts in cannabis.
Yeah, and we want to throw up a quote from your article where you talk about, like, in Massachusetts, people under 21, they can enter liquor stores. We talked about that according to state law, though they cannot process or purchase alcohol products. But in cannabis, the state law says that, quote, an individual shall not be admitted to the premises unless a marijuana retailer has verified that that individual is 21 years or older. So we talked a little bit about this, but it seems like there has been so many layers that, like, it turns some folks away, you know, because you have ID and checks after another. But we also seeing that the market is becoming saturated. So at some point, do you think that lawmakers and things like that, or based upon your research, need to rethink about these regulations or the way that folks do business?
I think there's a lot of talk in the industry, certainly Nikki and I have talked about it, where when these regulations were drafted, there's sort of this, okay, we've never had this industry in the state before. It's still federally illegal. Let's make sure that everything is as safe as possible. When I reached out to the Cannabis Control Commission, which regulates the cannabis industry, you know, I asked them directly, is this something you're looking into? You know, new parents in cannabis and perhaps the restrictions they have in childcare. And, you know, they sort of reiterated that public safety, public health, those are the big priorities right now. And again, I think that everyone's on board with that. I think in this case, like, there are several examples in the cannabis industry of very strict regulations that now the Cannabis Control Commission is actually in its regulatory review period where it will make changes to its regulations. And there's a few examples that, you know, business owners are looking to say, hey, this is a little overly strict. You know, we are in favor of keeping this industry safe. But, you know, this is really expensive on us. This is really burdensome on us. And you know, there's fear of actually some businesses even closing because these regulations are so strict and are really trying to sound the alarm and say, hey, you know, please change this as soon as possible. We're really in fear of, you know, pouring, as you said, like $1 million into this business and having it close. And I certainly think that that impact is worrisome to many businesses in Massachusetts.
And Nikki, did you consider at any point, you know, that this might be an issue for you?
Absolutely not. I was thinking part of being an entrepreneur is that flexibility to be able to decide, work from home, coming to work, bringing your kid, like whatever your preference is, that you can kind of decide like what your hours will be. But when it comes to this specific industry, I find that that's not the case. In real estate, like, there's a lot of flexibility with when you do showings or meet clients and things like that, but you don't have that for some reason in cannabis. I find it a lot more restrictive, which was surprising. And during my actual pregnancy, I was at the shop every day and it was fine, but then there just came to a point where I was like, well, now what? And so I feel like I'm figuring it out and I'm there as much as I can be now, but to be able to be there more would mean a ton.
Do you think some of it has to do with the stigma around cannabis?
Absolutely. There's this idea that it's completely unsafe. And I think even with the exposure, which that's why it's child-safe packaging, things like that, all the things we can do to mitigate children getting access to it, I think that's super important. But I don't think that necessarily being in the store is going to be how they gain access. A lot of this is things left unattended at home, things that, yeah, it happens with alcohol, but they don't have child-safe packaging. So we are really doing a lot as an industry to keep everybody safe. There's just that question of where's the line going to be, and where can we peel back where it's not going to affect people. We want it to still stay safe.
Yeah, Cassie.
If I may, yes, I think it's important to mention also that there are a lot of child safety laws. Dispensaries have to be a certain distance away from schools, child preventative packaging, as you mentioned. So there are also other protections in place, of course. One of the favorite quotes that Nikki said in our interview was that, you know, JoJo could enter the dispensary when she was in your belly, but not now. And I think it really calls attention to, you know, just some contradictions, perhaps, and the way things look right now. And I also think it's really important to note that Nikki is a trailblazer in the cannabis industry, the first Black woman and youngest person to enter a dispensary on your own in Boston. And one of the things that we talked about in the interview was, you know, your child won't get to see that. So I think it's important to let people in cannabis be the role models that they are for their families and otherwise.
Yeah, and I think the stigma piece is a big thing. You know, I think of teenagers, you know, sneaking to get someone older to buy them alcohol or things like that. That's not going to happen in a dispensary.
Exactly. Yep. There's a commitment to anti-diversion practices and making sure that people understand, and that is one of the few things that, although they are in terms of cannabis and how they're handling that from a law perspective, diversion there's zero tolerance for, and that's, I think, important. But yeah, the state has to kind of balance all of these things. And I know when they have these open comment periods, they're getting all sorts of comments. They're getting comments from the operators. They're getting comments from people who did have those instances where maybe a child got a hold of something. And they have to find a way to, obviously everyone doesn't ever end up happy, but find the best medium for everyone.
Cassie, where does this stand now? And we all know that the Cannabis Control Commission is going through some turmoils, to say the least. What happens next with all of this?
So, yeah, great question. There's actually a meeting on December 14th, and they're expected to take up conversations on a couple of issues. Next in line is probably social consumption, which is what you think of with cannabis, coffee shops, things like that, you know, consuming it in the same space that you purchase cannabis. And then, you know, it's kind of going to be an open field for all types of issues, you know, delivery companies, labs and testing, and issues as well as this one.
Absolutely. We'll be watching. Nikki John, Cassie McGrath, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.